My name is Levi Hospital, and I'm the Marketing Director at Levi Hospital, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our second annual World Mental Health Day Luncheon. Today we gather not just to share a meal, but to hopefully spark important conversations about mental health and work together to reduce the stigma surrounding it. Each of us plays a vital role in fostering understanding and compassion. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 1 in 4 adults experience a mental health disorder in their lifetime. The impact of this reaches far beyond the individual and into the workplace. Mental health issues can lead to increased absenteeism, decreased productivity, and a higher turnover rate, costing businesses an estimated $1 trillion globally each year. Companies that prioritize mental health initiatives and foster a culture of openness are shown to not only improve the well-being of their workforce, but also enhance their bottom line. Before we dive into today's discussion, I would like to take a moment to thank all of our event sponsors. Please be sure to check out the screens as we want to recognize all who have supported this cause. And a special thanks goes to Oaklawn Hot Springs for being our presenting sponsor and CHI St. Vincent for their gold sponsorship. So as we enjoy our time together, let's remember that it's okay to talk about mental health, to ask for help, and to support one another. We're all in this together, and your presence here today is a powerful testament to that. I would now like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. John Downs. Dr. Downs is the Chief of Staff and Psychiatrist at Levi Hospital for the past 14 years. He grew up in Hot Springs and graduated from Lakeside High School in 1972. Dr. Downs then attended UALR and UAMS Medical School, obtaining his MD in 1980. Psychiatry residency followed in the United States Air Force, and Dr. Downs also became a flight surgeon during his 12 years of military service. He is a board certified in adult psychiatry and forensic medicine. After that, Dr. Downs practiced psychiatry in Southern California, returning to Arkansas in 1992. Since then, he has directed both inpatient and outpatient mental health programs and has served as a preceptor for nursing and medical students in Arkansas. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. John Downs.
Thank you so much. And I really am grateful to see all these people here. You know, it's really important today, especially because this is the annual meeting. But you see, it's really the second year that this meeting has occurred. And if we wouldn't be able to call it an annual meeting if you hadn't shown up today for number 2. Just kind of died off. This is good. Y'all are here. This room represents an amazing tapestry of people that contribute to the overall mental health scene. An amazing amount of talent, people that contribute in different ways, many different forms of therapy. It's interesting and amazing and really heartwarming to see the cooperation within the mental health field on a daily basis when you work in the hospital, you work in a clinic, and you see the various people really put together a treatment plan for the overall benefit of the patients. But I want to take a few minutes and maybe ask some questions that you don't have to answer out loud. We're not going to embarrass anybody, but I just thought that a lot of us came to the mental health field through different avenues. Not everybody started out in the mental health field. I'll bet in this room there are people who were in different walks of life maybe and then got into the mental health field at some later point in their life. Is there anybody here that just started in mental health and has done it from the very beginning? Are there any people that got into it later on after some other work? You can raise your hand if you did. Well, some of us figured out real fast that we want to do this kind of work, and some of us don't. And some of us scratch our head for a while and try to figure out why we ended up where we did. So, rather than embarrass you to answer that question, I'll just embarrass myself and tell you that it took me a while. It took me till I was about 40 to figure out why I got into this field. Finally dawned on me, and of course when you figure things out, it's always pretty simple. It's, you know, I was raised in a Catholic household, and my dad said, well, son, if you're going to go into medicine, you might as well be a brain surgeon, because they're at the top of the list, top of the pecking order, brain surgeon, that's it. Yeah, well, Mom didn't care too much if I went into medicine or not, because she was a Catholic mom, and if you had one son that went into the priesthood, then that was your ticket to heaven. Bingo. Had it made. So I went through, you know how you do, you're in medical school and you want to do pediatrics and then you want to do family practice, and then I just kind of wound onto mental health somehow, and I can't even remember why, but it took me a long time to finally figure out that I was, you know, Dad wants me to be a brain surgeon, and I kind of tweak with the brain a little bit in this mental health field. Don't do surgery, but it's not kind of close. And then for Mom, I listen to confessions all day long. And I kind of do the little priestly thing, you know. So I'm some sort of a funny hybrid of a brain surgeon and a priest. Forgive me, Lord. That's where I ended up. But when your name is Downs and you have a lot of depressed people coming every day, it just really seems weird.
Mr. Bad.
I haven't changed my name yet. But stop and think about why you really went into mental health. We're going to get back to that in another minute. And then I also want to acknowledge that most of us, I think most of us had one special person that came along somewhere in our training or somewhere in our life that just clicked it for us. And that happened to me. There was one psychiatrist at UAMS. Well, I was done with psychiatry because, you know, I didn't like it all that much. But this one guy turned me around. He was quite elderly. His name was Fred Henker at UAMS, professor of psychiatry. He was amazing. He was Dr. Welby and every other amazing doctor rolled in one. And that one fella gave me the inspiration. So I hope all of you have had somebody that really guided you and steered you into that field. As you go along, too, you have these moments where you wonder whether you made a mistake when you came to this field, because you're feeling burned out and you're feeling like you're maybe people don't realize how hard you work and the effort that you're putting in. And sometimes it feels like there's not as much reward as there should be. And there are moments when you get burned out. So I think in order to combat that, you need to understand the impact of what you do. And I want that word, impact, to be, you know, emblazoned on your forehead when you walk out of this room. I was thinking the other day that, you know, we've heard this stuff about how Einstein, when they asked Einstein what the most amazing thing was in the world, the most amazing miracle or whatever, he said, the miracle of compound interest. Y'all remember that one? Miracle of compound interest. Pretty soon you'd have so much money you wouldn't know what to do with it. That's what happens in this field of mental health. It dawned on me that this is the miracle of compound. Think about it. You touch one person. You talk somebody out of suicide. You steer somebody into a different moment in their life. You do a little cognitive therapy and you get them to think about it. So how many times has somebody said to you, I never thought of it that way? You just gave them a new idea. The power of a new idea can save a life. The impact of that. So here you save this one life. And then what's the compound interest on that one? Well, that means they raise a better family, they raise better kids, they have better marriages, they do better work, they contribute more to society. In 3 generations, you have helped 87 people. That's compound interest. That's not generational wealth, that's generational health. Generational mental health. And it starts right here, in this room, with all of you. And when you think about that, and you get burned out, it might flip that little switch and let you know that really it is worth it. It is worth it. You can get up one more day and do this, and plow ahead, and make your contributions and your gifts to society. So my hat is off to all of you for doing what you do. It is very impactful. It's very, very powerful. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you today. And I hope that you figure out why you got in this thing and why you're going to stay. And please come to our 3rd annual. So we do have some people that are going to say more sensible things up here than me. So I'm going to introduce our speakers that we're going to enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Our first speaker is going to be a wonderful young lady, Townsend. She's sitting right here. She is in the music industry, has been for many years, lives in Conway, and she has opened for many chart-topping artists, including Sister Hazel, Chris Allen, Maggie Rose, and Ben Rector. And she also, not long ago, was named the 501 Magazine's Artist of the Month, receiving the Spotlight Award. And twice she was named the International Songwriting semifinalist. And she has won multiple Battle of the Bands competitions, and her songs have been in commercials, as well as some short films. She is passionate, very passionate about giving back and contributing to the mental health community. And she hosts a bi-monthly podcast raising awareness for mental health. And her podcast is entitled You're Not Alone with Townsend. So look this up. I looked it up and I was very impressed with it. And that project has made a lot of impact with fans reaching out to share their stories on her podcast. They shared their own stories, and she has received a lot of interest from multiple organizations, media coverage, as well as the title of Arkansan of the Day. She's going to be our Arkansan of the Day when she comes up here in just a moment to speak. The second speaker following Townsend is Wendy Blackwood. She is from Conway. She is a licensed professional counselor, clinical supervisor, and the founder of her clinic, Healing Path Counseling in Conway, Arkansas. She has been actively involved in the Arkansas Mental Health Counselors Association Board for the last 12 years and served as the board president twice. She is a member of the Trauma Recovery Network, a group of mental health professionals specializing in EMDR, and she volunteers with the Arkansas Law Enforcement Assistance Program. And they provide peer and professional mental health services to first responders. A very good activity to help our first responders. She is a professor at UCA, as well as a certified grief educator. And away from work, when she gets a few minutes, I guess, Wendy enjoys spending time in the outdoors with her husband, Jim. So I will sit down and let these ladies come on up and share some of their thoughts. Thank you so much.
Hey everybody, my name is Townsend. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. Thanks for having us here today. It is such a pleasure. Let me do another quick introduction as if he didn't do a wonderful job. So like you said, my name is Townsend. I'm a singer, songwriter, musician, therapist, and I think one of my favorite titles is a mental health advocate. And as he said, I started this mental health platform called You're Not Alone with Townsend, which consists of a podcast, among many other things, but every other week I get to interview people from all over the world about a specific topic under the umbrella of mental health. And so these have ranged all the way from ADHD to bipolar to schizophrenia to eating disorders. Wendy's joined me to talk about tips and tricks for stress, and the feedback has been amazing, amazing. So I wanted to start this platform because I wanted to know what made us us. I wanted to be a better person. I wanted to teach others how to be better people. And we can't do that without understanding what makes us tick, right? So I was honored to be asked to speak for you guys, and I wanted to sit up here, and they wanted to make it like the podcast. So I had the honor of having my dear friend and licensed professional counselor, Wendy Blackwood, join me. Thank you for doing that, by the way.
Welcome.
I'm going to let her introduce herself in just a little bit, but when deciding what we wanted to discuss today, Wendy suggested resilience, and I was like, absolutely not. No, I'm kidding. I was like, that's a wonderful idea. I feel like it relates to everyone, and so we decided to speak on resilience today because everyone needs to understand what that is. Like he said, you need to leave with impact on your forehead as well as resilience. So let me start with the Oxford definition. Resilience is the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulty. Okay? So another word for this would be toughness. And we all want to be tough, right? Okay, so be honest. In order to get through life with a little bit of sanity and a little bit of hair left over, we got to practice resilience, okay? It's not a one and done. It's a conscious choice, and thankfully, it's a lot like going to the gym. So the more you practice it, the stronger you will get at it. So think about your mental health and your overall well-being. It's a lot like on the airplane, you know, that person in the front of the airplane that's moving around and talking a lot and you're not paying attention at all. Yeah, she's telling you in that moment, you've got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you help other people. And I think that relates to resilience a lot because we can't help other people if we're unconscious, right? That'd be kind of tough. So I heard this quote by Mary Holloway today, actually, on the way here, and I wanted to share it with you all. Resilience is knowing that the only one that has the power and the responsibility to pick yourself up is you. So you're the only one that has the responsibility and the power to pick yourself up. So today, Wendy and I are going to talk with you guys about how you can consciously develop and grow and make your way through hardships and build your resilience, because life be lifing sometimes, you know what I mean? Life's hard. So let me introduce, we're going to hop in. Wendy, I'd like you to introduce yourself a little bit. I know Dr. Downs gave a wonderful introduction, but we want to know more about you.
Well, my name is Wendy Blackwood. I have been in private practice for about 20 years, but before that I worked in a variety of different places because I went to college for counseling, but then life, gets in the way, and got married. I had a child, had a career, and I did everything from working with special needs adults and children to being a grant writer. I ran a homeless shelter, owned a daycare. I've done a lot of different things, and so I always circled back to the counseling field. And so as a non-traditional student in my 30s, I went back to school and got another degree, and currently working on a doctorate. So it's a never-ending process for me, but I believe in it. I enjoy it. I love the people I get to work with, and every day feels like it's a useful career for me. And and having resilience, teaching resilience is kind of, I think, the foundation of what we do as we're working with people, whether we're working with them as an employer or whether we are their counselor. And so building that muscle, flexing that muscle is really important. It's a part of our everyday existence. So,
I guess that was good. I'm just kidding. That's wonderful. Basically,
Acceptable.
Wendy is wonderful. Yeah. So let's hop into resilience. So you wanted to ask the audience a few questions.
I did. So before I answer questions, I'm going to ask you guys. And so you can just raise your hand and keep your hand up if this resonates with you at all. So if you have ever lost someone that you love dearly, if you've ever had a broken heart, if you've ever been betrayed, if you have ever gone through a contentious divorce, raise your hand. Keep them up. If you have ever watched someone you love struggle with dementia, Alzheimer's, mental illness, addiction, raise your hand. If you have ever been bullied or marginalized, physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually abused, raise your hand. If you have ever dealt with a miscarriage, infertility, raise your hand. Lost an adoption. Now, look around the room. Just notice all these hands. That every one of us experiences difficulties. We all, in this experience of life, are going to deal with adversity, and adversity does not discriminate. We all experience it. And if you notice, we are not alone. And that's one of the foundations of resilience, is to remember that you're not the only one going through it.
I love that. So I love pointing that out. It kind of gave me goosebumps to realize you're not alone. They should name a podcast that.
We'll talk to someone.
Yeah, I'll talk to my people. So are there, something I want to know about, we defined resilience. We know what that looks like now, but are there different types of resilience? And what do those look like?
Well, when we think about resiliency, there's multiple different types that we deal with every day, we experience every day, that elevate us every day if we can tap into them. There's physical resilience, which is why we exercise. There's emotional resilience, mental cognitive resilience. There is social resilience, spiritual resilience. And depending on what we're going through at the time, we tap into different versions of what we need at that time. And so sometimes we need all the resilience, and sometimes we can really tap into one particular thing. If we're dealing with a physical or health issue, it may be the physical resilience or the emotional resilience we need. And so each one of those plays a vital role in the whole of just being a resilient person.
Okay, very good. Now, we talked about resilience, thank goodness. You can get better at it. It's a conscious choice that you have to make, not even day by day, but moment by moment, on how you want to handle a situation. And we talked about it's like going to the gym. You can get stronger. Mm-hmm. How can we strengthen our resilience?
Well, you're right. So resilience is not you have it or you don't. You are neurobiologically created to be resilient. Like that neuroarchitecture of our brain makes us want to survive. That reptilian part of the brain that says, hey, if we walk out and there's a saber-toothed tiger and there's a cute little bunny over here, our brain's going to pay attention to the tiger because it wants us to survive. And it elevates our situation where we are ready to fight, flight, freeze, or make friends with it. And so what are we going to do to survive? And our brain gets really pumped up to do that. Now, part of the issue with the world we live in right now is that we're just bombarded with things that our brain perceives as dangerous. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and the more we absorb, the more our brain believes we're in a heightened state of stress, and that affects our health, that affects our thinking, our emotions. And so being able to calm that down on purpose will change that repetitiveness that we get into. And so we are able to strengthen it based on how we choose to live our lives.
Yeah. And we may get into this in the next question. One thing I feel like I've had to do as an adult, and with social media in your face 24/7, and one thing I've read a lot about with resilience is how important boundaries are, whether that be social media. Something that has taken a lot of time and a lot of understanding is even setting boundaries with friends and family, and how important your resilience and your peace of mind is. Do you agree with that?
It's interesting because really, if you're going to create more resiliency, if you're going to strengthen it, you have to do particular things that are quite simple, but they take a really purposeful attitude toward it. And so, some of these strategies are to, one, just notice where you are. Notice being present in your moment, not avoiding, not numbing it out, and being able to say, okay, I am going through something really difficult, and I am aware of that. And it, at that point, gives you the choice to decide what you're going to do about it. To be able to say, I'm having a difficult time, it's all on me. At that point, knowing that, okay, I've not been singled out, as opposed to throwing up your hands and being the why me, you say, what now? What do I do now? And being consciously and intentional about your choices. The problem is we live in a world where we have been taught in recent years that everything should be shiny and easy and entitled and Instagram polished. And as you guys noticed from all the hands that were up earlier, that is not true. That is not life. The human experience, you're going to have difficulties. And so we get bombarded with that, and it kind of skews our belief system of what we need to do and chips away at resiliency.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I heard in a podcast at one point, and it really stuck out to me. So rumination, you just stress about something that may or may not even happen. Mm-hmm. And something that stuck with me was, he said, thinking about a certain situation, we do worst case scenario always, right? And he says the worst case scenario is almost like saying you're going to get struck by lightning twice in a row, 3 times in a row, while also getting bit by a shark on dry land, while also winning the lottery in that exact moment. The chances are it's not even really going to happen. We build up this terrible thing in our mind, and we let these negative impacts come in and just stress us out, and we stay on it. We just keep it going in our mind. So what are some things we could do to decrease those negative thoughts? Because they're hard to get away from.
Well, they are. And ruminating thoughts, those circular thoughts, it's kind of a maladaptive way that your brain's trying to help, but it's really not being helpful.
It's really not helpful at all, Wendy.
It's really not. And so, if you think about these negative thoughts, and again, our brain is predisposed to try to help us, it's a little bit like Velcro. Those negative thoughts, they stick, and they're hard to peel off. You have to really work hard at it. The positive thoughts that are really useful to us, they're more like Teflon. They just kind of slide away. We have to figure out how to catch them. And it has to be an intentional, purposeful decision. You have to decide in that moment, what can I control and what is out of my control? What are my choices here? What can I change? And what do I have to accept that is not going to change? And then where am I going to focus my energy? Where am I going to focus how I'm going to approach this, as opposed to letting the world happen to you and floating along with it and letting it take you downstream with those ruminating thoughts? You choose to stop them. You choose to, okay, I am going to do it differently. There was a study done, and it was really interesting in how choosing to hold on to good thoughts affects your entire being. And so they had people in the control study to write down 3 good things every day for 6 months. Didn't matter what it was. At the end of that study, what they found is the people that participated in that, one, they had a higher level of gratitude. They reported a higher level of happiness and joy, and anxiety and depression decreased markedly. So it's a useful tool, and it's simple. It's simple things that we can do if we choose to. We have to choose where to focus that attention.
I love that. Another thing I thought about when we were discussing resilience was thinking back about those moments that I spent wasted, more is a better word, so much time stressing about and just couldn't sleep. And now I probably can't even remember those moments. The tiny daily decisions that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the worst ever. Do you even remember it? 5 years ago, do you remember what you were stressing about today? No, the answer is no. And so one thing that I like to do is focus on, will this moment matter in 5 years? Will it matter in 10 years? Will it matter in 15 years? And the chances are the answer is no, right? So we can stop a lot of those moments just in that little evaluation of, is this gonna matter really? We can shut that down. So how can we achieve a resilient mindset?
Well, being intentional about it is the number one thing. Where are you going to put your focus? And then you have choices to make. And you have to kind of be brutally honest with yourself as you do that assessment. You have to ask yourself, is my behavior, my thoughts, my approach to this, is it hurting me or is it helping me? And if it's not taking you toward healing, if it's not taking you toward a better version of yourself, then it's hurting. The next level of that is, what do I plan to do about it? Am I willing to change it? If you are diabetic, should you have that third piece of cake? Am I willing to change that? If your heart is broken and you're laying in your bed looking at pictures and just so hurt, but you do that over and over and over again, ask yourself, is this helping me or hurting me? Maybe it's time to put them away for a day. If you're wanting that promotion, but you're not finishing that report, you're not getting things in on time, is it helping or hurting you? It can be across a lot of different areas of your life. And it's choices that are made, and it's conscious choices, and it's decisions that are made each day. What am I planning to do that's going to be better?
I feel like that third piece of cake's always worth it. I'll take a trip to the ER for that. Just kidding. That's not funny. So one thing, I want to touch back on the boundaries thing. So for me, this was something that was crucial to learn as becoming an adult. And something I heard that really stuck with me, and it might have been Brene Brown. I do love me some Brene Brown. She's a smart lady. But she talks about when you're setting boundaries and you're trying to figure out what works for you best, like does that third piece of cake, is it worth it? Yes, but you decide that on your own. So setting boundaries for me, it was when she said, when you speak to other people, when you speak to friends, you speak so positively, right? You're not gonna go up to somebody and just crush their dreams. If you do, you don't deserve friends. But so you're gonna talk positively and you're gonna be great. So why don't we do that for ourselves? Right? Mm-hmm. And that really stuck with me. So that self-talk, those things when you're at home and you're in those moments, why do we beat ourselves up so much? And why do we let people that do that to us, why do we let them in our life? Why don't we set boundaries? And something she pointed out, this could be friends that have been friends forever. This could be family members. And so realizing like your resilience and your life is worth putting up those healthy boundaries, that was huge for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. How does nature versus nurture, how would that affect your resilience?
So, we are born to survive. Our brain is born to survive. However, if you are born into a family that's loving and nurturing and takes care of your needs and supports you and models good resilience, models good problem solving and caring, well, then you have a leg up on that. Then when something really difficult happens, you have resources. It's built into you. You know who you can lean on. You also know that you've seen other people overcome things. However, that doesn't mean that if you weren't born into that you're just tanked, that it's not going to work out for you. Sometimes having to overcome things and having to figure it out on your own is a little bit of a superpower. A lot of times that brings you to that ability where you get to flex that muscle and you get to say, okay, I chose to pull myself out of that situation. I got past this really hard thing. And you lean into that. You lean into what has worked in the past, what didn't work, and then you consciously choose to move forward. It's a situation where you can strengthen it. What feels like a very lacking in resiliency situation one day can flip over the next day, and you realize I got past it. It's like you said, that 5 years, I don't know what I was upset about. What did I lay awake worrying about at 3 a.m. 5 years ago? Most of us don't know exactly what it was. And so the nature is there, but the nurturing is really important. However, that doesn't precede that you're not going to be resilient if you didn't have that.
Yeah, absolutely. Ironically, on my last podcast, we chatted about resilience and using those resources and how generations are kind of changing over time. Mm-hmm. And so I have worked as a therapist with geriatrics, and I found that 80 and above, this was several years ago, but they did not believe mental health was a thing. That was not in the vocabulary. And I remember they would talk about the war and they would talk about serving, and being me, I was very interested in, wow, do you ever struggle with that? I mean, you saw some wild things, and they would get very upset, mm-hmm. like verbally abusive at that moment because I touched a sensitive spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so even mentioning PTSD or depression or not being able to sleep, insomnia because of these things they saw, they were like, absolutely not a thing. But then they'd start crying. They'd be like, I don't know why, I'm just mad. Yeah. So they could only differentiate between mad and happy. But I'm really excited with this podcast and with talking to people like this. I'm realizing things are starting to shift a little bit. And I do feel like it's becoming more of a conversation, and which is exciting for things like resilience. I feel like the nature part, where I'm going with that is the nature part, growing up with the grandparents that were like, you're either mad or you're not, and that's it. You know what I mean? I do feel like we're learning to have these conversations and teach better coping skills. With that being said, what are some how can we find resources? Let's say you're having trouble and you want to do something about it. What's a good way to make the next choice? How can you find resources?
Well, I think a lot of times it's leaning into the people close to you. If they are appropriate, they can give you good advice on who to talk to. They could be a good resource for you. We live in the power of the internet. We can look it up. You can log on and type in mental health counselor and immediately, or support group. And a lot of different careers have employee assistance programs now. And you turn to your boss and say, hey, I'm struggling. They can refer you to someone that the company pays for. They can give you 5 to 6 visits. And it's being able to say, I'm going to take the initiative. I'm going to be vulnerable. And that's hard for people because there's a lot of stigma still. There's a lot of just rub some dirt in it, suck it up, buttercup, you're fine. No one wants to be seen as weak or as lacking in any way. And so that promotes suffering. And so finding those resources and being able to say, you know what, and being a resource for others is a big deal. To be able to allow them to come to you and say, hey, I know someone. I can refer you to someone, or if I don't, I'll help you look.
Yeah, I love that. One thing we touched on this podcast also was that parents accidentally kind of put out that people, like their children reaching out for help, and they accidentally are like, well, times were tougher when I was young and I got through it, things like that.
Yeah.
What are some suggestions you may have in that moment of a parent being like, okay, this is a conversation, my kids are coming up, they need help, maybe go to counseling together? Would that be something good?
I think definitely. I think it's acknowledging that, yeah, that might have been the way you grew up. That doesn't mean that it was the most useful thing. And to ask yourself, if my parent had said, hey, if you need someone to talk to, I'll help you figure that out. You don't have to handle it alone. That would have made a huge difference. And to be able to say, I will do that for my own child. I will do that for my grandchild or my niece or my nephew. I will go with you. Or I will help you find someone until you can do it on your own. It changes the whole narrative, and it does have that trickle effect that Dr. Downs spoke of as, you know what, that changes the way that person is going to deal with someone. That's going to change the way that kid grows up and parents and interacts with their friends.
I love that so much. Absolutely. It's definitely a trickle effect. And like I said, I'm so excited about the generation now and going further. It's becoming more of a conversation, just like up here.
Yes.
Had you got up here with my patients back in the day, it'd have been an empty room. Let me tell you, there would be no annual mental health. You'd be talking to yourself, sister. Wendy, did you want to end on anything as far as words of advice?
I think it's those 3 strategies. 1, acknowledge it. 2, you choose what you're going to give your attention to, where you're focusing your attention. And then 3, you decide, okay, is this helping me or hurting me? And what am I willing to do about it? I will end with a quote. So Viktor Frankl, all my counseling people know Viktor. He had a quote that I really enjoy that I think speaks to resiliency and our situations in general, because the life experience that we're going to have suffering. When you can no longer control or change your situation, you are challenged to change yourself. And adversity and challenges are going to happen, but they don't define who you are. They don't define your life. You do.
I love that. Wise words. I just want to take a moment to thank Levi Hospital and everybody for having us out. It's been such a pleasure. Thanks for reaching out, and thank y'all for listening. Thank you so much. Also, Wendy, thank you for joining me. It has been
You're
such
very
a pleasure.
welcome. Thank you for
Yeah.
asking.
Wendy has been a huge part of my life for sure. She's been on the podcast. She's helped me through a lot of tough times. Thanks for that, sister.
You're welcome.
Do you guys have any questions? We want to open the floor as far as questions for you guys. Everybody's afraid to raise their hand. I get it. Okay. Well, if they don't have any questions, it's been such a pleasure. Like I said, thank y'all so much for coming out.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have much to say. I just want to say I'm Zane Jeffers, the administrator at Levi Hospital. I want to say thanks again to Townsend and Wendy Blackwood and Dr. Downs for speaking for us. Of course, I want to thank our sponsors, especially Arkansas School for Math, Science, and Arts, for donating the venue for the second year in a row. And especially our presenting sponsor, Oaklawn, and our gold sponsor, C.A. Chapman. But most importantly, I want to thank you all, our community, for showing up and supporting mental health. And I hope to see you all for our third annual World Mental Health Day next year. And thank you.